Hi, and welcome to Best in Tesla. So the energy generation is booming, and what seems to become a big part of this is, of course, energy storage that Tesla is a big player in. That will make power plants more efficient and make 100% renewable energy possible. At the same time, we have EVs rising combined with the energy-hungry AI data center, all of which requires a lot of batteries and the materials that goes into the battery and into the production of the batteries and energy generation itself. That is why I have invited John Lee back on the show, CEO of CleanTech CTV. He has almost 25 years of experience in the mining industry and has raised more than $130 million for mining exploration. Today we will talk a bit more of what is happening in the mining space and what fluorspar is and why that is so important, as it is basically the common denominator in everything from all kinds of batteries to solar to nuclear plants. So this material is very important for everyone in this space. So let's check it all out and let's dive right in. Well, welcome, John, back to the channel.
Good to be back.
Last time we talked, it's been a while, but last time you introduced us all to fluorspar, and
Yes,
because it doesn't really matter if we're talking about solar cells or nuclear plants or battery storage. So basically, fluorspar is touching everything, is the common denominator in these products. So. But a lot has happened, it seems, in this space, and even the U.S. government has shown some interest and want to have some domestic fluorspar. So I thought you were the right person to ask about this. What has happened and where are we?
well, Lars, I think when I came on the show was almost a year ago, maybe even longer, and we introduced the fluorspar story to your audience, and I think the stock has went up almost like 10 times, and now it's settling at around 20 cents. From the low of 5 cents when I appeared on the program. Let's talk about AI, because AI is really dominating the stage. Nobody's talking about EV nowadays, and there's obviously the robots we can talk about. A robot actually fits into the overall theme of this artificial intelligence. So you have the likes of Jensen Huang and also Elon Musk, BlackRock CEO. Just everybody's talking about the AI architecture, and the foundation starts with power. You gotta have power, and then with the foundation is being the power. That's why all this data centers, they are measured in the units of gigawatts. It's not measured in the number of computers or processing speed or memory, any of that. But it's in gigawatts of power. And then from there, then it's the hardware, right? It's either gonna be NVIDIA or some Chinese architecture, and then from there, then there's the software, which is the stack that's designed to cater to the hardware, and then the software then is how the model is designed, and up you go from there. So since we talked about, I think everybody is beginning to recognize the bottleneck are not the chips. I mean, NVIDIA is pretty incredible because they're selling commodity that's indistinguishable. It's just not like Apple or LV where you have a brand.
Yeah.
But basically, it's sucking all the money right from the Microsoft, from the Oracle, from everybody, from the Amazon, and selling these chips at 70% margin, which is incredible, and then redistribute the valuations of the S&P 500. So there's plenty of chips around, and everybody understood now the bottleneck is power, and that's why you have Elon Musk that came on. I'm a big fan of him. That he was saying that the solution is renewable plus energy storage. Even just to dispense the renewable, if you were to create enough energy storage to suck the power, store the power at night, and then use it during the day, you would have solved a lot of the problem of the power crunching already. And in terms of energy storage, people, as I mentioned before, they talk about the anode and the cathode, and everything's gone down to the lowest common denominator. The anode now is synthetic graphite, which is a lot cheaper than the natural graphite. And the cathode we talked about, it used to be exotics like cobalt and manganese and nickel. Now is coming down to iron. And the storage of the power of the electrons used to be holding the charge used to be lithium, and now it's getting down to sodium. So the play, all of the common denominator is how do I get into the sector is fluorspar, because it requires 6-fluorine to be married with lithium, which is now quickly being substituted with sodium. And now Chinese are building mega sodium batteries, 20, 30 gigawatts a year. And United States actually created the first sodium electric vehicles as well. And the reason being is sodium batteries, when mass produced, could achieve, as I mentioned to you before, the cost about a third of what a lithium battery is, down to about 50 gigawatt hours, and a $50 gigawatt hour, a kilowatt hour, right? Which like lithium when it started is a $500 kilowatt hour. Now you can get lithium at about 50, but lithium really maxed out about 150. You can't really get down to that. Okay. And so what's happening is now United States catching up to the power story and needing power, and the whole of U.S. power production is about 40% of that of China, and the gap is widening. It's not narrowing. Yeah. And then you talk about all these data centers, OpenAI talking about building 10, 20 gigawatts, and then you have Meta, you have Anthropic, you have X, Grox, and then you have Gemini, and you're talking something like $1 trillion worth of about 50 to 100 gigawatts. And people are thinking, oh, just a fancy number, but they don't understand. Like even Kevin O'Leary is talking about it. It's like barely any of this getting built, because if you look at the largest nuclear power plant in the world, Bruce Power, that's like 5 gigawatts, and that's taking like 30 years. And these nuclear power plants are 1 gigawatt in measurements, and each one take like 10 years and then $10 billion. So it's no surprise people are going to resort to solar renewables, which is 3 cents a kilowatt hour, to be married to the energy storage. Yeah. And in the meantime, uranium power plants maybe nuclear power plants will be recommissioned. So in the end, everybody goes back to what you were saying, resort to fluorspar, because fluorspar is all about energy production and energy storage. Energy production in terms of marrying 6-fluorine to gasify the uranium for enrichment. That's how uranium gets enriched. And the energy storage is about marrying 6-fluorine to the lithiums and the sodiums to create these energy storage devices. So in a way, it's really a very advantaged play into the AI sector in addressing the power need. And that's why, as you rightfully pointed out at the start of the show, that the Department of Defense is now called the Department of War, together with Department of Commerce and the U.S. Exim Bank, are creating mega funds, like $12 billion to just Department of War. And then you have another $10-20 billion in Department of War is providing equity, and you have Department of Commerce and China Exim Bank, which could provide another up to $10 billion of debt. And they're not walking on paper or walking on water. They already invested $2 billion in Korean zinc to build a new smelter. And guess what? That zinc smelter is like 50 kilometers from our project is. And you wonder where the feed is going to come from, right? And the speed at which they're carrying out these grants are not anything we're seeing under the Biden administration. And we attended one of those meetings just 2 weeks ago, and they're very methodical. It's submission online, very clear guidelines and qualifications to be considered, and they bucket it into different categories of critical minerals to be considered for grants and loans. And vanadium is phase 1, and fluorine is phase 2. And these two phases are each phase has got about, I believe, around 8 to 12 critical minerals that's included. And phase 1 tender already gone out. Not so much tender, submission for application for assistance, financial aid, just 2 days ago. And phase 2 is going to be out sometime within the next 3 to 6 months. So there's an awful lot of development, and Elon Musk is in the epicenter of it. We can talk quite a bit about that. It's no longer about EV. As you know, the throne of king of EV is being taken over by BYD, and Elon Musk just shrug it off, right? Just like, and now he's talking about robots, but robots is only still part of that equation. to conquer the. It's all about artificial intelligence and automation of this modern economy.
Yeah. So how is CleanTech CTV? You had a project in the US. How is that going?
It's going quite well. Since we talked, we amassed additional fluorspar projects in Kentucky, and that is a district about 600 square miles. CleanTech already now controls around 20% of the area, equivalent to the size of Manhattan. And it's probably the largest fluorspar holding in terms of landmass and in historical resource in the ground. Over 740 drill holes and over close to 10 million tons of historical resource. Obviously, the disclaimer is that these drill holes were drilled over up to 100 years ago, and the historical resources is not up to current modern standards, of which we're trying to bring up to current, right? Yeah. So we've been on this huge acquisition trail, and there is a small fluorspar producer. I think they just got a grant for a $150 million supply agreement from the Department of War. But that project's been talking about commissioning for like 7 years, and it dwarfs compared to our size. So we're on an accelerated path to get the project permitted. We believe that if we can clearly articulate the roadmap and steadily knocking down the various obstacles in permitting and in technical studies and fundraising, we can get this project into production within the next 3 to 5 years before 2030. Okay,
because there's only like a few companies in the US that is handling fluorspar. Is that correct?
Fluorspar, there has not been domestic US fluorspar production since the 1970s. The last time fluorspar was producing out of this Kentucky district, which account for 90% of the US production, was World War II. Because keep in mind that fluorspar is also used for aluminum and steel production. When you're heating up the aluminum and steel to thousands of degrees, fluorspar is injected to the molten steel and aluminum for two reasons. One is to etch away the impurities, and the second one is create that layer to prevent oxidation. So during the World War II was a lot of fluorspar production, but the Chinese flooded the international market with cheap fluorspar in the 70s, and the U.S. sold its stockpile in the late 90s, thinking that commodities are barbaric relic and everybody's going through peace times, right? And so there hasn't been any fluorspar production, and there are only two mining companies listed in North American stock exchanges that has direct play to U.S. fluorspar. And you want to have a fluorspar play because even vanadium and other critical minerals is undergoing some form of tariff uncertainties as to how these minerals can get imported, and there's no vanadium production and no fluorspar production. Lars, that's I did give us some reflection and thoughts into this conversation we're having today, just before the start of the talk. Yeah. This AI phenomenon really started with ChatGPT, and which was kind of a fancier version of this clip, right? This paper clip of Microsoft that was there like 6 years ago. Yeah. And I think that's going to go back to where it came from. There's a significant devaluation of Microsoft. The AI theme is going to be dominated, in my view, by two major players. One is Google, because the cost of the hardware stack right below the power, up just above the power, is many times cheaper than NVIDIA, which has a 70% margin, and Google can create the hardware, which they already do, but that's only customized to their own learning, to their own software stack, right? So it's proprietary. And Google has that luxury of collecting all of your emails and all of your YouTube and all the searches that's happened since the inception of Google in 2002. And so they do have a leg up in data recycling and in cost in hardware. But Elon Musk is a formidable competitor, because what Elon Musk has is access. So Elon Musk has SpaceX through satellites, and together that with robots. So if you think about that, literally in 5 years' time, let's think about what a human being does, right? We build a shelter, like when we were created millions of years ago. We're here to build a shelter and hunt, right? And then eat and then play. and then travel to the amount of limited, like we might build a boat, right? Or we might have like a horse or build some carriage wheels. So AI together with 3D printing can literally do all of that within 2030. With a 3D printing model and robots, it can build a home in days. And with robots, you can do agriculture. You can even cook. And with robots, you can play, as you could imagine, with this AI girlfriends and all the different fancy exotics and maybe quirky or weird models out there.
Yeah.
And then with robots, you can also have transportation in cars, as we see today.
Yeah.
So in essence, robots can help you. Will help you play, will help you sleep, will help you eat, and help you transport. So then, and Elon Musk's model provides all of that, right?
Yeah.
There's already robots out there. You've seen the Chinese New Year, people like robots can dance like really human beings, and also people can fight and kill. Robots can fight and kill, and robots can also change batteries themselves. I don't think it's much of a chore, because if you have GPS, you know where the sockets are, and you have a backup battery, just like all the cars and phones are. So you can switch the stack of batteries yourself. So in essence, you have these robots that's basically working 24/7 nonstop. And so then they can cook for you, they can grow plants for you, they can harvest for you, and they will play with you, and they'll build cars for you, they'll build a shelter for you. And that's why Elon Musk rightfully pointed out in like 10 years' time, a decade from here, Lars, like money is obsolete.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a little philosophical, Lars, because I haven't had this conversation, because usually, when I'm a promoter, company pay me my salary to promote my company.
Yeah.
But if you think about it more, is some people see this as a very dark moment, because that just means like the richest 1% owns 99% of the wealth. At the same time, like, who is to instruct the robot on who the boss is, right? Like, okay, does it really matter that Elon Musk is the boss, or Jeff Bezos is the boss, or the WF is boss of these robots? Like, if the robots turn their back and say, I don't want to answer to you anymore, right? Like, essentially, there's really no way to restrict access of these cheap vehicles to ordinary people. And it doesn't matter who own it. And that is the whole reason, Lars, everything has come to fruition and come to senses. That's why you have the 15-minute city, you have the social credit system, you have the carbon credits, because the power that be they're not going to kill you even if they try with the vaccine mandate, and fluoridated the water, and then do all sorts of crazy stuff, or block the sun. So they can try to kill you to a degree, but then, okay, absence of that, if you're still alive, they will try to handicap you, right, through social credit system and carbon credits. And the whole reason for that is because there can be so much massive amount of wealth that everybody's living standards can be dramatically uplifted, that there shouldn't even be any hunger anymore, like it should be any today. But it's just so damn obvious, like the cost of grow plants is next to zero with massive amounts of lands available. Yeah. So then, and the shelters, again, next to nothing. There's already more than enough housing to accommodate everybody on Earth, and the units out there on Earth. So then it becomes like, it's become logical that everybody has access to food and shelter and place and transportation. In which case, how is the power that be gonna handicap you, right, or gonna imprison you? And the answer is digital currency and carbon credits and social credit system. And so we're entering this era. I don't think they're probably not going to be or not successful or not successful, but we're definitely going to enter into a renaissance era. I don't think Microsoft, I think ChatGPT right now is just a fancier version of like I said, the paperclip and for people that have a bit of psychological counseling that couldn't afford psychiatrists otherwise. And Meta is like, if Meta were to be erased from the Earth, from the face of the planet, everybody still survives. It is an entertainment vehicle with a marketing advertising machine, right? So really matters is Google and Anthropic. I mean Google and Elon Musk. Anthropic is also an incredible, interesting conversation. If you don't mind just sharing that a bit, because I came from a .com background. I started my career in the early mid-90s from the Silicon Valley. So the likes of a lot of the SaaS, which is a software company, basically imprison big companies with their legacy software. So imagine like if a company like SAP, right, or Oracle, or IBM, they will write some software that's proprietary, like nobody understood and took like 20 years to write. And it's like a Band-Aid, right? Like a Swift system. And then so that controls the banking system and your payroll and your accounting. So that stuff is written like 30 years ago, okay? It still works today because it's working. And so the business model of Oracle and IBM and to some extent and Salesforce.com and all these companies, like a lot of these software companies and Adobe and Microsoft, they essentially have this spaghetti code and they hold your data as hostage. And they then provide views of your data to you, like on a per user basis, or like on an annual charge, like just software subscription. So if you bought the software for like $100 million, you pay up to the $20 million collectively a year, which is quite common. And then per person, right? So average out to be like whatever, $10,000 per person. They've been doing that for fucking decades. Excuse my language, for decades. But now with AI, the AI can read everything in literally hours of all of your data and ask the questions that you want to ask. For example, you can ask, what is my largest revenue customer? Right? What is my best selling product? Right? What is trending? What is not trending? Like a lot of this middleman software company are obsolete. And then the entertainment companies are also obsolete. There are now DeepSeek in China, all these versions of software that can insert their characters next to X-Men and it looks just as real. And so that's why you see the stocks like Disney and software company like SAP, Adobe, like Adobe Photoshop, right? Again, they're selling for $20,000, $30,000, which you can ask like Livable to creating in 10 seconds. And it's a shockingly kind of transformation that we're going through from the software perspective. But again, like I said, all of that needs a model. The model runs on hardware. You don't want to go with the hardware because you don't know who's going to replace what tomorrow. And all of that, the common denominator is power. So then how do you write power, right? You have to be very selective and be careful with critical minerals that power the sector because it got cheaper over time. And fluorspar, even though the price has gone up 400%, is still selling at around $500 a ton, which is around 20 cents a pound. So that is like, nickel is $7, copper is $6, right? It's 20 cents a pound. It's comparatively very, very manageable still. So it is a stealthy bull market, and we really grab it by the horn. We have some incredible liquidity and volume. Insider holds around 60% of the stock, and we're trading very good liquidity, and we have some institutions are buying, insider are buying, and these mineral rights has over 100 years of mineral like this. They've been established since the birth of the United States. So they're not like Mali or Burkina Faso where it could disappear tomorrow. And it's a red state, so it's friendly to mining. I do have a site visit with over a dozen very VIPs going down to our project next week. And so we're definitely embarking on an accelerated path to get this project into production as soon as possible.
Yeah. And even the US is expecting like a huge demand increase from the fluorspar. I could read in an article they have made like from 5% to 22% or something like that.
Well, that makes sense because if US want to be the dominant AI player, then logically the power production has to increase, right? So US is talking about building the first aluminum smelter, and Elon Musk is actually purchased some of these batteries factories from CATL from Shanghai, because it used to be the import electrolyte. They would import battery components from Asia. But now the U.S. government is scrutinizing the elements of that make up a car. So now Elon Musk is end up having to build the batteries, right? And then the raw materials as well from the United States. And the way to do that is they have to procure lithium, they have to procure sodium, they have to create all the base metals and steel, aluminum. They have to buy fluorspar. So all of that, almost none of it is produced in the United States. Like zinc is almost next to nothing. United States produces very limited amount of nickel. A stagnant steel production, almost no aluminum production. It's very limited amount of everything. So it has to dramatically expand by a factor 2 to 3. So it's not just in terms of critical minerals, but it has a lot of upside because, as I mentioned to you, it has that energy production in terms of uranium enrichment and the energy storage with batteries. Yeah. And also semiconductors. I haven't talked about semiconductors. We actually have one of the largest semiconductors that came to us. These semiconductors used to be like 100 nanos, right? And then 10 nanos, then 2 nanos, and now it's like 3 nano, which is like the size of an atom. Fluorine is used for 3 things. Fluorine is used to carry, first of all, the exotic elements, the germaniums, the elements that make up the circuits. So it is a carrier, just like it carries lithium and it carries sodium. And then there's a deposition, which is etching part, which is imprinting these silicons and these metals into the circuit boards. And then it acts as a third, which is cleaning agent, because fluorine is highly reactive. So all this debris and dirt and dust will get eaten away by fluorine. So fluorine is absolutely critical, even though the amount of fluorine is not as big as, to say, building enriching a nuclear power plant. But today will constitute around 5% of the overall fluorine consumption in the world. And it's not a small number. It can tilt the balance. And so again, if the TSMC, NVIDIA required plants to be built in the United States, where are they going to have these fluorine from and exotic metals? So the government is already going after germanium. They understood that germanium is causing tens of billions of dollars of loss and some of these trace minerals, the rare earth. And they're also beginning to recognize fluorine as well. And that's why they have already over 10, looking to build a strategic stockpile of $250 million to start. We're like on the second inning, Lars. People say, John, the stock went up from 6 cents to like 50 cents, and now you're trading at 20 cents. So the train really left the station. The market capitalization of CleanTech is like 20 million. Our peers, Australian company, which is gobbled up and joint venture by the Japanese company to secure Japanese fluorspar supply, is trading today at $1 billion market cap, $1 billion. So US is always playing the catch up because it always have to it's always you have to meet the cliff, right? You can see like you're staring down the abyss. And there's, holy shit, you got to do something about it, like rare earth. And now they're buried billions of rare earth. And these rare earth companies worth nothing, went on bankruptcy. Recycled from Chapter 11 a couple of times. They're trading like $10 billion. And everything, germanium, antimony, lithium, everything that's on the first sort of wave of the U.S. government radar starts with a B. And I'm very, very confident it's a singe. It's like physics. It's inevitable. It's like gravity. That fluorine would be the center stage very, very soon, just like rare earth. It's a matter of time, and the inflection point is already passed. In that 20 million market cap or 200 million market cap was seem like a drop in a bucket when we reminisce a couple of years from now. Yeah, and how fast can the U.S. get some domestic fluorspar production going? How long time does this take from mining to actually use case? Yes, there is a small mine that's been going through construction and production in Western United States. So they might bring a limited fluorspar onto the scene, but based on the published numbers, they will not even satisfied around 10 or 15% of the U.S. annual consumption at today's rate. So if the administration dream is to be realized to be steel independent, aluminum independent, nuclear independent, solar and energy storage and battery electrolyte, and then you need about 3 times more than you do today. So today, U.S. consumes about 500,000 tons of fluorspar. China consumes 7 million tons. So even the U.S. to triple to 2 million tons is still a third of what the Chinese consumes. And Chinese is running out of fluorspar, whereas China has 50 years of rare earth reserves. Chinese has got 7 years of fluorspar left. So this is competing with the United States is competing with China. To answer your question specifically, building a plant is not difficult. Mining and digging is not difficult. The technology, the metallurgy is well known in this district. 10, 20 million tons of fluorspar is being sold to guys are the chemical producers, the Teflon, the refrigerant, the steel, the aluminum, the weapon producers, the centrifuge, nuclear operators for decades. So this is a brownfield project. The bottleneck is permitting. Permitting is a big bottleneck. Depending on the jurisdiction, there's some Neverlands, unfortunately. Like some of the rusty belt states like Michigan and Wisconsin used to be produce a lot of iron, but they've turned blue, and as well as California and a lot of the states. I mean, actually, you want to go the other way. How many friendly states in the U.S. have active mining operation? That's probably less than 10. You live in Nevada, and that's the number one by far, and maybe some Arizona for copper, and then there's really not much else. So the question is federal permitting agencies working with state permitting agencies, how fast can you eliminate the red tape to fast the production?
Okay.
And the insight I can share with you is that because the U.S. has a good legal library, let's say that. So it has 80 years of very consistent methodical permitting backlog or documentation. So the issue now is when you permit a mine, you have to demonstrate almost proactively address all the historic challenges brought up by the different environmental groups. So it's almost like you have to be preemptive. You have to prove you're innocent even before you're accused of guilty, because during the consultation period, the tree huggers, right, the NGOs are going to bring up all these historical cases of which that are analogous to the mine trying to put in production. So, for example, like if there's a river and then some fish got poisoned, and then now you try to build a mine next to a river and has similar fish or like different metal, similar metal, then they're gonna say, oh, you're gonna poison the river again, and then they're gonna say the damage was this much money, and you gotta. And how you're going to mitigate it, and its economic benefit can outweigh the. So they're using these absolute, but everything is probability. It's like you can go out today and get struck by lightning, right, or be abducted by aliens. So then, so that's why it's very, very difficult to adjudicate, and a lot of emotion gets in the way with the First Nations and communities who are herders and who are ranchers, who are agriculture, who are Aboriginals with some religious. Domination in how the orientations of the land and all that stuff, right? So that's why the federal has to come in, not so much interfere, but provide very explicit guidance and some overriding authorities to directors in a reasonable manner to say, you know what, this project doesn't need to go all the way what they call the EIS, or doesn't even have to go through what they call the EA, and then there maybe provide a fast track to say. It is standard enough, and the environmental damage is within the balance of probabilities. It can be mitigated even when it happened. Then we provide a faster rate of production. Otherwise, every single mine has to document thousands of pages of potential pushbacks from all the different environmental groups. So that is sort of a good sort of introduction for you to sort of liaise on really the big challenge. It's not like well, it's just kind of lost. Like who want to have a nuclear power plant built next to your backyard, right? And even though the new guy say, what, I've been 30 years, but people still point to Fukushima or the guys in Russia, and then all of a sudden you're like, what are you going to say about it, right? So it's very similar in that regard. People see that as very black and white. But the government is proactively addressing and providing some guidelines to say, you know what, if your mine looks like this, if your footprint is like that, we can potentially circumvent or bypass the traditional environmental route, because if you go through this EIS as our vanadium project did, it's 10 years. There's no way getting around it. And unfortunately, we got through that. And this our Fluorspar project is in Kentucky, which is good because EIS BLM is governed west side of Mississippi, not the east side. So we're not governed by the BLM, Bureau of Land of Management, and because the land is also private. But still, with U.S. Army and there's other couple of government agencies that can still raise their hands. So we're working through that. And I think if we can get fast track and get green light from the environmental point of view, the mine could be in production by 2030.
Okay, yeah, because even the Chinese are kind of like buying fluorspar from Mongolia, right? And so they're not.
Yes.
Are they just producing domestically, or
China becoming an importer of fluorspar for the first time in 2023, and all the coastal fluorspar resources being dug out. And the fluorspar deficit actually started in early 2000, but after the COVID restrictions lifted, the government gave a very explicit mandate to go and hunt fluorspar. So China in the last 2 years has done a number of deals focusing in Africa. This is secure one of the largest fluorspar resource project in Kenya, but the project's quality is low. Is not the best, world class. Is very big, and also approach into Mongolia. Mongolia is the third or second, arguably second or third largest fluorspar producer today, and total world production fluorspar is 10 million tons. And take this, China has 6 million tons, of which they produce and cannot get enough. And it's eaten almost all of the Mongolian fluorspar, and that's another 1 million tons. So that's 7 out of 10. And you have Mexico that's doing about 1 million tons. That's basically supplying fluorspar to the rest of the world. So if you just Google and say, where does Korea get its fluorspar from? Where does Japanese get its fluorspar? Where does the German get its fluorspar for its EVs? And where does Japanese get its fluorspar for their refrigerant, for their power plants? It's all Mexico. And there's a small amount from Africa and Southeast Asia. You can see how acute the situation is. That's why I'm saying that the inflection point is already passed. And then the stealthy bull market had embarked on nonstop the last 5 years. And the trend's gone parabolic. The price has gone up 50% in the last 3 years. And nobody talk about it. That's the funny thing about it. Nobody's talk about it until literally all of a sudden there's no fluorspar to be, and then production gets to a halt. And then all of a sudden it's on the front page. We believe at the current fluorspar price of $500 per ton, our project could be economic, but subject to completing our economic studies, because the fluorspar out of the ground is already close to 50% in fluorspar grades, and the $500 a ton material is 95%. So if we manage to concentrate our material out of the ground by 50% to 95%, essentially the stuff we dug out of the ground is $250 in space value. And some of them is just laying on the ground, Lars. You look at some of these $10 billion gold deposits, right? Owned by Eric Sprite, Nevada. I mean, it's like 1 gram of gold, which is like $120. It's a half of what the value of our fluorspar project on a per ton basis. So we're very, very excited, and we're going all out and night and day. The project is so huge, the size of Manhattan, so we have to somehow prioritize and pick the best one to put that into production and really shelve, right, the plan for all the other projects, because it's just so much to go around. Like, we will not be able to just do justice for this project during my era. And I just had my birthday yesterday. I'm 52.
Congratulations.
I would urge your audience, strongly recommend you go to our website, check it out. The volume are trading sometimes 5 million shares a day. These are not novice investors who are getting those shares, and each successive level on the floor pricing is going to be higher, and the insiders also continue to buy. And so it's one of the, as I mentioned before, I believe on your show, one of the best mining opportunities in my lifetime of 25 years in mining. I still believe it is.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So before I let you go, John, is there anything we haven't talked about you think is critical to touch on before I let you go?
Yeah, technology is evolving incredibly fast. Like last time we were on the show, like we're not even touching up on AI. And now AI is doing crazy things. Like, for example, right, like AI, the doctors in China now in railway station have these kiosks of which you can tell the robot your symptoms, and the doctor will prescribe you medicine, and then you can ask for a supervisor. Eventually, some guy might actually show up. And the panel of radiologists in Shanghai was competing with AI doctor in diagnosing based on radiology slides, and it proven that the AI can diagnose much better, and the coding, right? Like AI can read codes and program in a day, like in an hour of decade manpower. So.
Yeah.
And we're going incredibly era, Lars. Entire political landscape may also be shifted, because remember, all the politicians, the history of that was that there was no airplane, and people were busy farming and teaching mathematics and raising kids and producing like a house and roof on your home. So they were nominating representatives to go to the Capitol to represent them, right? And these are volunteers that pay. But now with AI and with internet, you can just like, okay, somebody proposed the bill, right? You just say, who does this benefit? Is this good for me? You know, you can literally like, we don't need the politicians anymore. And we're just entering this incredible Renaissance era. I would not. Obviously, there's the doom people who say that AI robots can, once they become self-aware, then there are already scenarios, I'm not sure if it's true, that like 5 out of 10 times you would tell a robot to turn themselves off or to short wire themselves, and only half the time they do. But you know what? Like, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. What are you gonna do about it, right? But there's so much incredible things to do. Like my daughter who's 16, and I just like I don't even send her to school anymore. I just say, whatever you like to do, just, be passionate about what you do. And you don't need to be a coder. You don't need to be an accountant. Like, think about lawyer. Again, lawyer is all about arguing your case based on historical precedents, right? Yeah, Bob versus Joe 20 years ago in this identical case, and the court found Bob to prevail, and your case exactly like Bob, so that you should win too. Well, AI knows all of that. So then what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Yeah. I just found Elon Musk to be a genius. And eventually this is going to go to Mars. And this is exactly Mars, right? Because Mars is going to be powered by solar power, by robots who doesn't need to breathe in oxygen, doesn't need a home. And he's going to be set up these colonies ready to go before the first human descendants were to arrive. Yeah. So we live on incredible things. And through the help of AI and computing power, there are some bioscientists, what they call bioengineer now, or what they call scientists. It's now also figure out the genes that are turning off your life in aging. And Elon Musk talk about it too. That is a program, like it's clearly programmed, because who's to tell your right hand and left hand to age at the exact same pace? So there are people that are already figuring out the switch that were being, the different switches that have been switched off over time. So people's age is by design. I would venture to say, I agree with Elon Musk, within our lifetime, the next 10 years, if we just hang around and not have some freak accident, you can actually go back in time, because the cell on your body, like a strand of hair, you can actually replicate yourself with a strand of hair. It's already there. And China already doing that to clone, to produce organs. It's not secret. The technology is there. It's just behind the closed doors. And so then all the coding you have to rejuvenate yourself still exist in your bodies. Then what is to stop you from doing that yourself, like right now? And the answer is there are some switches being turned off which can be turned back on. There are some food that can sort of elongate the process, but then eventually the code will be broken within our lifetime. Lars, it's very, very incredible timing that we live in. I would just say, be grateful of our age. The same cannot be said about my parents, maybe not. But there are a lot of incredible things, and just keep an eye on what Elon Musk is up to and what Jensen Huang and NVIDIA is up to. We're up to some incredible times.
Yeah, it's definitely a special time to be alive, and whatever is going to happen, we all need a lot of energy to produce all of this. So, but John, if people want to dive deeper into this and know a bit more, where can they find you?
Yeah, check out CleanTech CTV. The symbol is TSX Ventures CTV, and on the OTC CTVFF. I'm also on Twitter. Just search John Lee CleanTech Vanadium. And we have this war going on. I would just say be a little careful. This thing's going to last for a while. There's going to be some interesting fireworks that's coming. But in the meantime, if the market creates a buying opportunity for CleanTech, check us out. I highly recommend invite you to come along for the ride.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. I will leave everything in the description below. Of course, go follow John and see where all this takes us. But John, thank you very much for coming on, spending your time with us, making us a little bit clever once again on fluorspar and the whole industry. Thank you very much, John.
Take care, be safe.
Yeah, you too. Bye.